Yes, the Honda Civic Si, the Volkswagen Golf GTI's arch nemesis. Well, yes, well that's the case, especially in North America, because we never got cool Citroens and Peugeots that would compete with the Si and the GTI, ever, which is pathetic, sad. But hey, that's the world we live in. All right, I'm not so old as to remember a brand new third generation Civic Si, which is a third generation Civic, but the first Si. But I am old enough to remember the fourth generation Civic, the Si, when it was brand new, and at the time, in the late 80s, it and the Mark II Golf GTI really lit a fire under my butt, because these compact, small cars with performance, handling capabilities, styling upgrades absolutely speak volumes to me. And well, this 2020 Honda Civic Si Coupe also speaks volumes to me. On the subject, I said coupe, and well, it's important to note that this is actually kind of like a farewell review to the Honda Civic Coupe, because after this model year, it's over, it's done. I mean, apparently all the young kids don't want coupes anymore, they want hatchbacks and sedans. I don't know, I don't make the rules. So 2020 base price for a Honda Civic Coupe in Canada, $21,690. In the US, $21,050. That small gap in price between the two base cars is explained in part by the fact that the US offers the CVT as standard in the base car. Again, I don't make the rules. I don't know why that would be, but that's just the way it is. Both countries have similar trims, LXs, sports, tourings, blah, blah, blah. But this is the one, the SI. This is the one we want to talk about. In Canada, base price is $30,290. In the US, $25,200. Both cases, that is a ton of car for some little pocket change. Now, what do you get with the Civic Si? Yeah, well, you get heated SI sport seats. I'll show them to you. Navigation, wireless charging, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, 7-inch screen. You know, the usual stuff. And well, obviously the visual add-ons, which make a big difference. Clearly the car is more aggressive. These 18-inch blacked out wheels are part of the game as well. And then there's this. This happens to me every time. I mean, the 17-year-old boy racer in me is gaga over the spoiler for some reason that I can't entirely explain, but it works so well on the coupe, which, you know what, after almost a week with the Civic Si Coupe, I think it's the better style, body style for the current generation Civic. The hatchback isn't that pretty, and the sedan is even worse. I don't know. I don't make the rules. The badging obviously is part of the game, as is this centrally mounted tailpipe, which at first I thought was a little bit over the top, but hey, I'm totally fine with it. Totally fine with it. Okay, let's try and do a quick tour, because that's not what's important. 289 liters, not quite 12 cubic feet of trunk space. It's not huge, but it's not disappointingly small. How about that? I don't know. Spoiler? Why am I so stupid for this spoiler? I don't get it. There is a back seat. There's proof. Here are your Civic Si sports seats, which quite honestly look fake and overly bolstered and almost comical, but they actually happen to be very comfortable. All right, so let's slide in here. Start her up. Okay, so I'm gonna shift this into neutral. You know what? Let's just talk about this right now. Shifter, manual transmission is the only one available with the Si. Thank you, Honda. But I don't know, the shift ball, I have very average sized hands, and the shifter just seems so tiny in my hand. It's weird. This is weird what I'm doing right now. The throws are short, quick, very tight. Anyway, enough of that. Very typical Honda gauges. Lovely, easy to read. I may have bounced off the red part there at one point or another. Fit and finish inside is fine too. Very Honda-like. You know, it's necessary because it's an Si, but it's not necessary because it's not what you think it is. Visibility is a little bit hampered, especially when you're sitting this low in this car. So when you do that left-hand turn, otherwise visibility is fantastic. Even out the rear, I don't know if this is going to, yeah, see, even out the rear with the spoiler, it works quite well. So your standard 7-inch screen, which is a nice combination of actual hard buttons well integrated into the surface, the typical Honda stuff. Wireless charger as part of the SI package as well. Now here's the only drive mode button, which is kind of fun because it's like normal, sport, normal, sport, normal. Anyway, storage, did I go to storage? Let's see, it's okay. This actually comes out too, but I won't do it because I won't be able to put it back in. Door bins are a good size. Here's another shot of the seats. I don't know, they look funny, they look cartoonish, but the support is actually real. I won't actually step out of the car this time. I'm going to put my belt on and we're going to go for a drive right away. Now, I've had the absolute pleasure and privilege to drive every new generation of the Civic Si since the 6th generation. And yes, which means that I also got to drive the 7th generation Civic Si. And well, we don't speak of the 7th generation Si. And I am speaking about the actual Si in Canada, as well as the EP3 SIR, which was a complete disaster as far as I'm concerned. Other people feel differently. Point is that I've had the opportunity to drive them all when they were new. And one thing always kind of pops up at the very top of my mind when I drive a Civic. And keep in mind that I've driven a lot of GTIs over the years, after doing this for over 20 years, it happens. If you need to know what the difference is between a proper SI and a GTI is always dialed to about 7.5 to start. And then you have your drive modes, or when you start pushing it, the car responds in a certain way. And you can bring it up to 9 and change. The Civic Si starts out of the box at 9, if you will. Everything is dialed a little bit tighter. Everything is a little bit tighter. Everything's a little bit more, not agitated, but excitable, if you will. And that applies both to throttle response, it applies to steering, to brake pedal response, it applies to absolutely everything. And that may be, well, it does two things. It's what makes it such a fantastic driver's car, but it's also what limits its appeal with older guys like me. I love the SI, but I'd get a GTI because it can be a little bit cushier, a little bit more comfortable. Now this car has what Honda calls an adaptive damper system. Essentially what that means is that when you're normal, the dampers are normal. When you go into sport, the dampers are in sport. So it's not necessarily adaptive per se. They have two settings which adjust to the setting, essentially. The Civic Si is powered by the 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which puts out a hearty 205 horsepower, 192 pound-feet of torque from 2,000 to 5,200 RPM. Only transmission, 6-speed manual. It makes this car very quick. But I think maybe the issue with the engine is that although the max HP kicks in at 5,700 RPM, you can feel the car running out of breath by 5,000 RPM. So it's not a mega rever like previous normally aspirated Civics from the early 2000s. My goodness, I love those. And there's another thing, and it's unfortunate for me, but funny at the same time. When I drove a 2020 WRX a while back, Subaru fixed the rev hang between gear changes, and as I reviewed the car, because I didn't notice it, But getting into this car, I noticed the rev hang, and it's kind of bothersome, to be quite honest, because it's not necessary, or maybe it is for emissions and fuel economy and smoothness of operation. But if you're a slightly more aggressive manual shifter, if you are really involved with gear changes, with rev matching, you know, it is a pain in the butt. Whereas if you want to do a quick shift, the engine speeds and the transmission speeds when you're doing an upshift are not matched, and you can actually feel the clutch slipping. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. And when you do that, you put it in sport, it's a little bit worse, but only when you're driving, you know, calmly and relaxed in the city. The beauty with this car, the harder you push it, the harder you drive it, the better it responds, the better it feels, the more at home it is with the way it's being pushed. Even in a straight line, this is a fair amount of torque. You can feel that LSD kind of making sure that both wheels are getting, which is standard on the SI, you can feel both wheels pulling ahead. And there's no hesitation, there's no torque steer. It's just absolutely fantastic. Where was I? Yeah, the harder you drive it, the more it likes it. See, the GTI also responds in the same manner, but in more of a dialed back way, if you will. Oh, the Civic SI. I absolutely love this car. I'm not entirely upset by the fact it did it there. By the fact that the Coupe is going away, because it really doesn't matter as long as we still have a Civic SI. I mean, if you want one, now's the time to buy it. Otherwise, it'll be gone forever. And more than likely, Coupe SI will actually appreciate in value in time. Because every time Honda does something right, which is the case with the Civic SI, they tend to do well a few years down the line. Anyways, those are far too many words to describe a very, very enjoyable, very entertaining, hot compact car that is the Civic SI. But I still get a GTI.